What is up, everybody? So as you can see, we are not in the shop today. We're in my office, and yes, there are Funko Pops and nerdy things all over, stuff me and my wife have together. So wanted to take this opportunity in this video to talk to you guys about getting you up to speed, because if it hasn't been obvious, it's more than clear that the stuff that I've been posting up is old content. If you follow me on social media and you follow me on YouTube, you can see that there's a time difference between the two. The social media, like my Instagram, is completely up to date. YouTube's not. And that's a shame on me, but I haven't been able to update and edit my videos. And when I finally got a chance to, it leads me to this, because a lot of the content that I made, I ended up losing. Either it got deleted accidentally or it got moved somewhere and I don't know where it's at. I've looked at my laptops, my cameras, my desktops, the cloud, you name it. And I can't find majority of these videos that I've been trying to get or find to post up and properly edit these videos. So I said, screw it. I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to make this video about updating everything and getting everyone up to par. I have some clips that I can use and I'm going to show through this video and get you guys up to speed to where we're at right now. What happened in 2025, how it went, how it ended, how it collapsed, and how we ended up going into 2026 with a different mindset. So with that being said, we're going to get on it and we're going to talk about getting you guys up to speed. So keep watching. So first off, the first thing is the headers. I know in the previous video we talked about waiting on the headers, got them Cerakoted. Huge shout out to my buddy Travis Powder Remedies. Within a week he had a turnaround on those headers and it came out into this beautiful burnt bronze color. I wanted black, but the burnt bronze just ended up coming out even better. It was what he had to work with at the time because he was waiting on supplies, and I'm not mad. I am beyond ecstatic with them. So the headers ended up going in. As you can see, they were actually fairly easy to throw in as well too. Yes, I had to lower the subframe a little bit, but I didn't have to completely detach it, and I just had to support the engine up a little bit. So the headers went in fairly easy. I'm actually still surprised at how smooth it was for me to throw them in. I think it took me about an hour to an hour and a half to get the headers put back in with gaskets and new hardware. So that got done. And at the same time, while the headers were being finished, I ended up finishing up the trans tunnel. The trans tunnel, you can see I ended up getting it painted, as well as on the bottom side, I applied a heat-treated spray to coat it. So, God forbid there's a fire or anything like that, or just to help keep heat down and not coming through the trans tunnel, as well as the SFI shift boot. I ended up riveting on the boot on, no issues there. And like I said, it came out pretty good for something that I ended up bending and cutting and molding and doing all by hand using a vise and a welder and some snips. Like, I'm actually pretty impressed with how well it came, so I can't complain. So that ended up taking care of that. And with the headers, the exhaust put back up, the shifter put back on, I was actually able to run the vehicle. I didn't move it anywhere, but I was able to run it, go through the gears after filling it up, and no issues. Phenomenal. I was beyond excited. And then that ended up leading to the next part. So we talked about the intake manifold, about how I was running the Boss 302, and then I was talking about whether or not I was going to do it or not. And then a part of me said, we're not going to do it. Season's right around the corner. Let's just leave the Boss, go out, drive a vehicle, get some seat time, and be happy. Well, I ended up saying screw it, and I ended up putting the 2020 manifold on anyways. Held off on trying to jump to events and risking jumping on racing a vehicle thinking that I can turn into a problem. So I ended up holding off, throwing the manifold on. We ended up putting MMR's IMRC lockout. And if you don't know what IMRC is, it's the intake manifold runner control. It's a valve assembly that's built on the manifolds that operate a different throttle body that's built into certain manifolds to help with like performance and emission stuff. Ended up deleting those, threw the MMR lockouts, threw the manifold on, redid the lines, got rid of all rubber lines and went complete full braided and AN fittings. Set up the fuel pressure regulator, got everything all nice and neat, nice and clean, much easier to access, much easier to work. The surge tank system in the back, as you can see, much cleaner setup. All the rubber lines are gone. I think there's like one more rubber line in the system. That's because I ran out of braided lines. And then at that point, I was just like, it's just a simple vent line. I didn't want to worry about making braided lines for venting out the tank. So that's all that was. Ended up doing that. And so the fuel system was set up, intake manifold was set up, ended up fixing the venturi setup and doing a more robust and a more reliable setup than the stock E46 venturi setup. And that ended up working out phenomenal for the whole year. Then we ended up going over to my buddy Andy's, took the car over, and he ended up doing a dyno run. And the dyno run came out fantastic. The manifold made stupid crazy power from what we had on the Boss 302, and the power band was all the way across. Well, I can just show you guys the chart. You guys can see here on the chart that we ended up hitting 420 wheel horsepower and 384, almost 385 foot-pounds of torque. And like you see, the power band just goes all the way across, so no problems there. So the car is set up on there, and then we ended up going immediately out to go get a couple test runs, and the car night and day. The MT82 was the first thing that stuck out to me, besides the power. Power was clearly right off the bat just going. I almost forgot about the MT82 until I realized, like, I'm here to test the MT82. So power off the bat, throttle response, everything huge, like felt it immediately. And then going through the gears, I forgot how nice it was to shift through the gears as smoothly as they were. The MGW shifter and the MT82 rebuilt just was butter. And it was much better gearing for my setup. And it did great all the way up until I wasn't able to drive anymore for the rest of the year. But besides that, MT82 wonders. 2020 manifold, even bigger improvements. So I'm completely, like super pumped about that. So we talked about the headers, the trans tunnel, the manifold setup, and finalizing the fuel system. I also ended up having to change my power steering setup. I got rid of the old cooler and went to a Chase Bays dual pass fluid cooler. The old cooler ended up having caused restrictions, and I ended up having pump problems. The pump was whining, it was going through a bunch of other issues. So ended up getting rid of that cooler, went with a bigger Chase Bays cooler, new lines, new fittings, and I ended up fixing my power steering problem. So that was a huge improvement there. I ended up actually saving my power steering pump because I thought my pump was bad, and it wasn't. It was just, asking for more fluid, and the restriction on the cooler wasn't helping. So I ended up taking care of all that. And then, first half of the season was fantastic. A lot of driving, no issues. Everything was great. Everything was wonderful. And then midway through the year, things just kind of collapsed and then went downhill from there. Second half of the year is when things kind of went sour. So second half of the year, we ran into issues with projects at home. I do a lot of my own stuff at the house, and there was a big project that involved a grinder pump. And if everyone remembers, it was this big, tall, tower-looking thing that I had inside of my garage, and that was a grinder pump assembly. I ended up having to work on putting that in, just to save me as much money as possible. So I ended up doing that, and then that project was actually done by myself. I'm not joking, like I literally did everything from start to end by myself. The digging, the filling, the pump installation, the pipe routing. Like I had help from my father-in-law, and that was the most I got. So that took a lot of time out of me. That took a lot of energy. That ended up taking a lot of money. And then it was just one thing after another with projects. Like I said, if you follow me on my social media, you'll understand the amount of things that I ended up having to go through, between water problems with the house, piping, the previous owner not taking care of the system, me having to fix the systems, me having to pretty much almost update all the piping that fed water to the house, to the heating system, so forth and so forth. Then other projects around the house, projects inside of the shop that needed to be fixed. It was just so many things. And then in the midst of all that, I also ended up starting a new job. Not that there was anything wrong with my last job, but I got offered an opportunity for more money at this new location and an opportunity for growth. And that was what I've been looking for, because that's going to help me in my future. So in the midst of doing all those projects and starting a new job, I also was dealing with health problems, both physically and mentally. I was going through a lot of difficulties, things that were really holding me up and ended up causing more harm later on as I tried to just, work through it. And instead of just taking care of it, it caused me more problems. It actually almost started slowly convincing me that I was done with drifting. I was done with a bunch of stuff, and I just wanted to live an A to B life. And I don't want to live a normal A to B life. That's not how I want to do things. So we're went through all that, dealt with all that. I was able to get myself situated. We ended up doing 2 more events at the end of the year, one being a competition. It was the Casino Royale at Englishtown, sorry. And we did pretty well, but we ran into problems there as well, too. First was a broken axle flange. Well, it wasn't really a broken axle flange. I ended up actually shearing all the bolts clean off the axle flange and ended up having to remove the spacer after we got all the bolts removed from the flange. And then I just put the OEM bolts in and I was able to run. But that damage cost me to miss some practice time. And then after I had it fixed, got a couple laps, was able to practice. Car was great. Came back into the pits, started to get ready, started to fuel up, started to do all that to get ready for qualifying rounds. And then we ran into a problem where we started leaking out fuel like crazy from our surge tank. Tried to fix it and ended up not getting it fixed in time to be able to make our qualifying. So I thought I was eliminated from that. And luckily we got, I don't know what kind of click, but we were able to put something together. I was able to eliminate the surge tank setup and ended up running pretty much a stock fuel tank setup. And I got super lucky because there's a battle that they do before top 32 for any leftover people to fill in spots. People that pretty much got zeros that have an opportunity to battle their way in. And I got lucky that the guy I had to battle, his car blew up. So I got a buy run. And if you watch the YouTube video of the competition, my buy run was poor, like really, really poor. I was actually trying to test the vehicle and trying to see if I can get it to go. And I ended up having fuel starvation while I was on that buy run. So I ended up having to call. I thought it was something minimal. And then when I was in the burnout box, getting ready, was doing the same thing. Called the competition timeout, went back just to fill up my fuel tank. That's all it was. I wasted a competition timeout to go fill up my fuel tank because I was next up in line to go compete. So went, filled my fuel tank up, and then I got the run against Chris Snap, which he ended up winning. But it was a very close battle, surprisingly. I don't know if it was a close battle, actually. I think it was I'm just going to say it was a good battle. Chris obviously ended up winning. I had a couple mistakes. The car was still kind of having some hiccups. So, and that was the last event. But I had the confidence knowing that the way the car drove all year long and that it was just little minuscule things that ended up breaking that are super easy fixes by just improving it or changing a couple things. I'm confident going into 2026 that the car is going to be perfectly fine. So I'm not too worried about it. But that leads us to this point. 2026, the goal is to compete. I'm confident with the way the car drives and feels. There's a couple improvements I'm going to change, like I said. A couple of suspension things, some couple of, fuel things that I'm going to try to fix so I don't run into this problem again. And then maybe a couple more power adders, but we're going to see what happens. As of right now, the car, to me, confidently, is set up fantastically. I feel more than confident knowing that if I get in that seat of that vehicle, I'm going to be tough competition for anybody. And I say that confidently because I'm confident in myself. So 2026, there's a lot of changes that are going to happen. Things are a little bit easier. My life is a little bit more balanced. My health and my mental health, both physically and mentally, like I said, are slowly coming back. I've been getting myself together a little bit better. And I've kind of got my foot down on what the goal is for this year. So, like I said, I am going to be competing in 2026. Obviously not Formula D, but I'm planning on going to as many competitions as I possibly can. Trying to go to as many events as I possibly can to get as much seat time, meet more people, and be able to do more. As of right now, that is the goal. That is a setup. Obviously, we're going to work on getting the car painted, getting it to one color, getting everything all set up. I got a couple partners that are helping me out for 2026, and we'll go through that later on. But there's a lot of people on board with helping me, and I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to keep you guys up to speed and pretty much get you up to par to where we're at right now, instead of just trying to make clips and put little by little by little to try to make something and get content out there. But I'm so far behind that it doesn't make sense. So with that being said, we're going to leave it at this note. I just want to say thank you guys for everything, for the people that have watched and subscribed and follow, for everyone that is watching. I really would appreciate the like if you enjoyed this. I really appreciate if you guys would subscribe, and I would appreciate even more if you guys would comment, tell me what can I do to fix things, what can I do to improve things, what can I do to be better about it, so I can make better content, I can have better ideas, because I have a bunch of ideas, I have a bunch of plans already made. Besides the racing, I have other builds and I have other things that I'm going to be posting, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it personally. Some pretty unique ideas and pretty unique builds. I got an engine swap idea that I already have the engine. I just got to figure out a chassis. I have a couple of things that I have in mind, like I have a restoration project that I'm hoping to get started on, and there's a couple other things, like projects related to the shop, projects related to the program, and some ideas. So with that, I just want to say thank you guys. Like I said, if you liked everything that I've been posting up, if you hope to see more, please like my videos, like this video, subscribe, hit the notification, chime in. I would greatly appreciate it. So with that, let's give a huge blessing and hope that 2026 goes the way we plan. And wishing you guys a happy new year. And y'all take care. Thank you very much.